Perfect. So welcome to Navigating Your Budget with Confidence and Purpose. My name is Irene Kelly or Irene Kelly, and I am the Financial Education and DEI Manager at Women's Economic Ventures. It is a pleasure for me to spend time talking about our budget with you. And I wanted to just first and foremost take a moment to welcome you to the session and invite you to take this time to be very honest with yourself and reflect on how are you feeling with your current financial life and what can we do to make it better from that perspective of our budget, as we're going to be talking about during the session. But please make sure that as we go through the session, if there's some ideas that come up for you, some reflections, please write them down. Because my goal for today is to be able to share with you practical tips that you can incorporate into your budget to feel much more confident when you are navigating your numbers and to bring purpose, not only to your budget, but to your finances. So let's get started. Again, I was sharing a little bit ago, if you have any questions as we go through the material, feel free to ask it. You don't have to wait till the end. So you can use the chat or the Q&A, whichever it's easier for you. So before I officially get started with the session, I want to take a moment to introduce WEAVE. For those of you that are new to WEAVE, WEAVE or Women's Economic Ventures is a nonprofit that was founded over 30 years ago to create a more just and equitable society through the economic empowerment of women. Although we focus on women, we welcome and empower people of all gender identities, and we support entrepreneurs through 3 different pillars. One is our consulting or advisory services pillar. Our other pillar is learning solutions. And lastly, we have funding and access to capital. And this session wouldn't be possible without our partners at the Ventura County Library. So this session is brought to you in partnership with the Ventura County Library. So hello to all our fellow librarians in the space. And if you are part of the Ventura County Library community, well, you're very, very welcome in this space. And we hope that this session is not only helpful, but I want to make sure that we make it very engaging and also an opportunity for us to feel better when it comes to our finances and our budgets. And lastly, I do want to thank another one of our community partners, City National Bank. So this session is brought to you with their special support. And without further ado, let's get started with the session. I mentioned a little bit ago that our mission of WEAVE is the economic empowerment of women. And I want to take a moment to define what we mean by economic empowerment, precisely because we're going to be utilizing this framework when it comes to navigating the topic for today's session. So economic empowerment can be seen as a process in which we become stronger and more confident, especially controlling our finances and our financial decisions. So this process is also about getting equipped. So think about getting tools for the toolbox you need to manage your finances. So I want to thank you for taking the time today to invest in yourself, invest in your financial life. And as we navigate the topic of today's session, I share that I believe there are three main components that once we address each of them, it's easier to have a better grasp on our finances. It's easier to feel empowered when it comes to our financial life. And these components are first and foremost our mindset. And we're going to be diving deeper into each of these concepts, but I want to make sure that when you think about finances, you are incorporating these areas. Because when we just focus on the numbers, there's a big piece of our financial life that we're not paying attention to. And that's the part that is going to bring purpose to our finances. That's the part that is going to make it exciting for us to sit down and look at our budget. So we're going to divide our topic today into these 3 sections. So first, we're going to explore what financial mindset is. Then we're going to talk about your goals and priorities. And this is where I'm going to invite you to start taking notes of what comes to you, because most of the time, those things that come up for you when we're having these financial conversations are there for a reason. And once you incorporate those things and those things and those priorities in your actual budget and in your actual numbers, that's when there's a mindset shift. And that's where we can truly get into this process of empowerment. And lastly, we're going to cover the financial basics piece, right? The knowledge around how does a budget work? What do I have to be looking at when it comes to navigating my budget? So these three components are what we consider key when it comes to your economic empowerment. So I want to be very, just very mindful when approaching this topic. And one of the first things that I'm going to invite you to do as you would reflect on your numbers, to reflect on your budget, is to follow these, what I like to call money mantra. This is a very important kind of rule of thumb when it comes to navigating this topic, and is focus on what you can control. It's very easy for us to focus our attention in the things that we're not liking when it comes to our financial life, that we're not liking about the economy in which we live, in which we operate. And when we put too much time and too much energy in the things that we can't control, we oftentimes are exhausted by the time we're going to sit down and actually navigate our numbers. So I would like to encourage you to reflect on, when it comes to your budget, what is within your control, so that you can put all of your energy into those pieces. So here I want to open the space for us to use the chat, and for you to share some of the things that come to mind when we think about things that are not within our control. So when you think about your financial life now, and even before you register for this session, when you saw the title, right, Navigating My Budget with Confidence and Purpose, what are some things that are affecting your budget right now that might not necessarily be within your control? I'm going to take a moment here if you want to share some of the things that are concerning you, that are worrying you when it comes to your money. Let's identify which ones are not within our control. Please feel free to share in the chat. Here's some of the ones that have been shared and are front and center right now is inflation, right? Cost of living. Inflation rates are not within our control. So it's important, psychologists have this terminology called name it to tame it. So when something is causing us stress, we have to name it, right? Because only by naming it, we'll be able to understand, okay, what's my role with this thing that I don't like? So that's what we're going to be doing today with these pieces that affect our budget. So name it to tame it. What are some things that are not within your control? And I see someone raise their hand. Yes, Rashida, you should be able to talk if you want to talk, or to share something in the chat if you want to share something in the chat.
The chat is disabled, so we cannot
type in our questions. Let me see what I can do for that. But Rashida, please share with me what came to mind for you when it comes to things that you can't control.
Unexpected expenses.
Absolutely.
A capital expense that you weren't expecting, and something breaks down.
So those emergency and unexpected expenses, that's a very good one. And in here in a minute, we're going to flip the question, right? What's within our control? So even what you just shared, Rashida, if there are things, so when it comes to unexpected expenses, what's within my control? Right? So maybe setting money aside for those, just having a fund there for emergencies and unexpected expenses, right? So we want to start shifting. Right. As soon as we identify what's not within my control, that's stressing me a little bit, what can I do to better adapt to that? Any other things that come to mind?
You're right in making sure that you have enough funds allocated month by month to put aside for the larger capital budget.
Let me figure out what's happening with the chat. Thank you for bringing that up. I don't see what. There you go. Let's try to see if the chat works now.
Yep, it's working.
Perfect. Thank you for bringing that up. I was like, we have such a quick group today. Perfect. Thank you for sharing, Harmony. Medical emergencies. Oh my God, yes. Yes. So I want you to start taking note of those things that came up for you right away, right? Because those are the items that when it comes to navigating our budget, we have to be proactive about those things, right? And even if it's a little bit that we're setting aside for medical emergencies, for unexpected expenses, those actions are truly what allow us to bring that confidence back to our finances, because we know we're doing something towards gaining control of our financial life. So those are very good examples. Thank you for sharing. So now let's talk about that the other side of the coin, right? Or that other piece of the puzzle, which is what we can control. So what are some things that immediately come to mind when I ask you what is within your control when it comes to your finances and your budget? What is within your control? Especially, yes, go ahead.
Spending.
Exactly. Our spending habits, how much we're spending in things. Absolutely. What else? This is also where insurance comes in, right? When we start talking about certain like medical emergencies and other expenses that we can insure ourselves from. That's a piece that's within our control. And here is where I would like to start incorporating our mindset, right? What we think about our money, how we approach our financial life and our budget, that is completely within our control. And sometimes it doesn't feel like it is. So we're going to navigate a little bit deeper that concept of financial mindset. So please remember to focus on what you can control as we continue navigating this topic today and beyond, right? Focusing on what we can control can truly allow us to reduce the stress that money can have in our lives. So that's going to be the caveat for today's session, right? Remembering when we're approaching something, please be compassionate with yourself. We have had very difficult years, economically speaking, and it is absolutely normal for us to really to feel that constraint in our budgets. It's absolutely normal. That's why it's important for us to be compassionate with ourselves, but be proactive, right? This is about being proactive. So let's start navigating deeper into the concept of financial mindset. When I refer to financial mindset, we're talking about our way of thinking about money, our opinions about money. And our financial mindset, it's a product of our environment, our culture, our family, our values. And oftentimes it comes up almost unconsciously, right? It sometimes can come up as these, also known as financial baggage, right? Things that we're dragging with us. And a lot of these things can be associated with those things we heard growing up, like, oh, money doesn't grow on trees, or don't get into debt, or all these things that we heard growing up. So here I want to take just a quick moment to ask all of you if there's something that comes to mind when it comes to financial mindset. What's one financial lesson that you grew up hearing about or seeing your family practice? What comes up when I talk about financial mindset? What's one thing that you feel like you absorbed from your environment growing up that affects what you do with your money now? If anything comes up, please feel free to share in the chat, or you can also raise your hand and I can enable your voice. So if anything comes up, paying bills is stressful. Yes, absolutely. And sometimes it's not necessarily what we heard growing up or what we saw growing up, right? That also has an immediate impact in our financial mindset. Let me see the chat. Save for unexpected expenses. That's a very good money lesson right there. And you'll see that I'm gonna ask you more questions regarding what you learned growing up, because this is a topic that just discovering what we learned growing up. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? So I invite you to continue reflecting on this after the session and truly doing it from a place of curiosity, doing it from a place of what can I learn from what I experience, and also what might I need to unlearn, right? That piece that we're going to be discovering. So thank you for sharing. So that piece that we were just talking about, that's the mindset, right? That's what I think about money and my ability to manage my money. That in turn affect our confidence, How confident do we feel navigating our budget, navigating our numbers? And financial confidence in this setting means trusting our own abilities and qualities when it comes to managing our money and managing our finances. So our mindset and those voices sometimes in our head, right, that tell us, oh yes, don't save on this, don't save on that, don't do that, or do this. We have to pay attention to those voices because they immediately impact our financial confidence. So I do want to take a moment here to share that as a financial professional, before working at Weave, I used to work as a financial advisor. And I work with many clients developing their investment portfolios. And I can't tell you how many times I supported clients that in paper, they had this wonderful plan. But when it came to taking action on that plan, their mindset was their biggest barrier and their biggest obstacle. So it's important that we don't underestimate the power that our mind has when it comes to our ability to manage our money and truly take ownership of our financial life, the good parts and the not so good parts. And that's where confidence comes in. So here, I want to take a moment to invite you to ask yourself, what words come up when you hear the word budget? And this is going to be where we start identifying where is your financial mindset today? Where is your financial mindset when it comes to today's topic, which is budgeting? So please be very honest, right? When the moment you hear the word budget, what comes up for you? Please take a moment. Again, name it to tame it. If some negative things came up, that's good, right? We want to be able to understand where that is coming from and do what's within our control to change that, turn it into something more positive. So anything that came up, please feel free to share. Or emojis, I love emojis too, that works. Right, and stress, anxiety. Yes, tedious, absolutely. Restrictions. Yeah, let's let it all out, right? Name it to tame it. We have to be very, very honest with ourselves, because once we realize, this budgeting thing is not, I'm not liking it, it's not working for me, then let's see what's within our control to make it different, right? So thank you so much for sharing and for honoring how you feel about budgeting, right? That's the first step towards shifting that. So in terms of shifting, I want to ask you a different question. What words do you want to come up when you hear the word budget, right? If we're coming from a place of, this, I feel restricted, I feel stressed, how do you want to feel when it comes to budgeting, right? What words do you want to associate when you sit down and review your numbers? Yes, this is what we want, safety. And I'm going to ask you, please write down those words. I want you to be able to see them because we're going to connect them with the topic of budgeting. Okay, empowered, in control, absolutely. So those words are going to be key because those words are going to help you tweak your budgeting process so that we get closer to that feeling. Freedom. Oh, yes, I love it. So please make sure that you write down the words that came up for you. And here, it's important that we realize that we're so much more connected than we think, right? Budgeting, it's something that is challenging for so many of us. And research shows, for example, that 76% of working Americans live paycheck to paycheck, which means that our budget can be one of the most important tools for us to eventually get to that place of safety and freedom where we can start setting money aside to build that safety net that we deserve, right? And that is going to help us get closer to those feelings that we brought up of feeling empowered, feeling in control. Now, when we start navigating this process of how am I budgeting in the first place, right? And what have I learned about budgeting? That's when we're going to be able to discover some barriers that we can start working on. So here is where I want to address sometimes the big elephant in the room, which is our financial past, right? Sometimes what we saw growing up about budgeting it's what we believe now and what we put in practice now. So let's reflect a little bit more about what you learned growing up. so that we can connect it to this important topic of budgeting. So here, just like you have pen and paper handy, I would like for you to, again, take a moment and take a few deep breaths and start reflecting on these questions. This is going to be homework, right? There's a lot that you can reflect on in this exercise, but I want us to just get it started. So first question I would like for you to reflect on is, how were finances handled in your home during your childhood? Just whatever starts coming up for you, right? Write those words down. What did you see, right? What did you see growing up when it comes to how finances were handled? Then another very good question, what money management lessons did you learn growing up? And we already touched a little bit on this one. And some of you shared really, really good things, like saving 10% for unexpected expenses. I like that one. Now, when you start reflecting on good things and bad things, I want us to be very mindful here, right? Again, this exercise is not for us to judge our parents, call them and be like, what did you do to me? Right? Or what didn't you do to me? No, the other way around. This is for us to understand what are those things that I should celebrate, that I learned, and what are some things that I need to better evaluate that might be getting on my way, right? Here is where the topic of debt comes up a lot, right? If you grew up in a household that was very just that had a lot of conflict with debt and that had an aversion towards debt, that might be an area for you to explore, because ultimately debt can be a very powerful tool to get us to our financial goals. So we have to be very objective when it comes to navigating our financial past and identifying what are the things that might not be serving me, and be very honest with yourself. Another important question, what fears and feelings towards money did you absorb growing up? And this is where we start making that connection with our budget, right? When you were growing up and you heard the word budget, what was happening around that word? What was happening about that process? And then from there, it's when we start identifying, oh, I'm repeating that, or actually I'm doing something completely different, and evaluating if that works for us or doesn't. In other words, is the process and all the fears and feelings you learned about budgeting growing up, are they getting you closer to that word we shared earlier, to how you want to feel? Are they getting you closer to feel secure, to feel safe? If the answer is no, that's where we're going to be making some changes. And the last question I would like for you to reflect on is, what achievements and financial problems did you experience growing up? And again, here we can take a deep breath. I know these can be a little challenging. So please be compassionate with yourself and be very proactive with what comes up for you, right? Everyone has a different financial life, and it's important for us to honor what we learned and what we didn't learn. And once we start reflecting, once we start owning, because this is about owning our financial past, that's where we can start tapping into that confidence piece that we want to incorporate in our budget. So before that, again, I want to invite you to continue this reflection. We are recording the session in case you want to be able to access these questions later. But these questions are good for you to talk about. Even if you share finances as a family, these are things that we should be talking more about, because we can support each other along the way when it comes to navigating what we learn from these questions. And when it comes to learning from our financial past, again, it's all about being compassionate and being proactive and identifying the good and the bad, right? So that you can learn from it, let go of what it's affecting your financial well-being, and doing it from a place of no judgment, right? I want to kind of bring that back, because I think that's important, right? We can't change our past. We can only learn from it. And this is going to connect directly with what we were talking about in regards to our confidence. So once you take the time to continue to reflect about your past, that's where you're going to start identifying who you are when it comes to your finances, right? And here I want to share this definition of confidence from a writer called Nicole Khalil. And Nicole has a wonderful book. I highly recommend it. It's called Validation is for Parking. It's a wonderful book. And there she shares confidence is knowing who you are, owning who you are not, and choosing to embrace all of it. Before we dive into our numbers, it's important for us to focus on our financial journey as of today, right? And celebrate the wins, right? Knowing who you are, knowing what you have done, what you have learned, what you worked so hard for, and owning who you are not, right? Being very honest. Hey, I'm not the best saver, but we can change that, right? That's within our control. And start navigating this piece of what is it that I didn't learn? What is it? Or, hey, I am not a person that likes to purchase X type of thing, right? That's good. So start identifying what is important for you when it comes to your finances and what's not important, right? That also matters. And choose to embrace all of it, right? Once you embrace, okay, the good and the bad, the things that you don't like right now, but you know that you can work on. Once we embrace that without that judging, it's more about being very, very, very proactive, very realistic, and very objective. It's about, okay, this is what it is, right? This is how I've managed my finances, right? I'm not going to judge myself. That's the starting point. Once you embrace that, then we're going to be able to navigate our numbers coming from a place of confidence, coming from a place of, I've got this. And if I feel like I don't have this, there's plenty of resources around you to support you in your journey. You don't need to know it all, right? There's a big industry around our financial lives, precisely because we're not expected to know it all. We just have to start with understanding what we learned, what we need to unlearn, and embrace that, right? And continue on our financial journey. Once we have that piece of kind of embracing our past and our financial present, that's when we can start identifying what is it that you want for your financial future, right? That piece is gonna kind of close that loop before we talk about our budget. So to recap a little bit, for us to have a budget that we can truly navigate with confidence and purpose, we have to take that time to start connecting with our mindset, our financial mindset, start learning from our financial past. And then from there, okay, now I'm ready, right? Now I know exactly where things are coming from, where my thoughts and my behaviors about money are coming from. And I'm ready to move. And that's when the moving forward, the purpose piece comes in, or what I like to call your financial future, right? So if you think about it, we're navigating this topic in past, present, and future. So when it comes to our financial future, this is where there's two components that I like for us to think about. The first piece is our vision. Our vision is connected to the question I asked a little bit ago. How do you want to feel when it comes to your budget, right? Our financial vision, then that's a little bigger. Like, how do you want to feel when it comes to your finances in general? For the exercise that we did a little bit ago, we focused on the budget. And some of you shared, I want to feel safe. I want to feel empowered. I want to feel free. That's the vision, right? That's the larger piece of how you want to feel. What do you see? And once we have that, then it's our duty to dig a little deeper. And that's when we start talking about goals and aspirations. So here, I'm going to ask you to take a moment to reflect with me on a couple of things. So please make sure that you have your pen and paper handy. And here, I forgot to mention at the beginning of the session that I'm also a certified yoga teacher. So this is I'm saying that because we're going to take a moment to do some breathing, right? And I truly want you to incorporate some of these pieces of how do I feel? How do I want to feel? Incorporate those pieces when it comes to your finances, because your finances have a direct connection with your health, with your well-being, with your confidence. So again, this is a marathon, not a sprint. We're just gonna cover the tip of the iceberg right now, but I would like for you to continue this journey of reflecting and navigating your financial life and what you want for your financial life. So we're gonna start with a vision piece, right? So I want you to take a moment If you want, you can close your eyes. If you want, you can just keep them open. What I would like for you to do is just connect with the present moment, right? Take a deep breath in. Take a deep exhale out. Again, deep breath in. Deep breath out. Very good. And on our next inhale, I would like for you to ask yourself this question, right? How do you want to feel when it comes to your finances in general, right? How do you want to feel when you think about your money? How do you want to feel when you sit down and look at your numbers? How do you want to feel? Okay. And then from there, I would like for you to start reflecting on how does that look like, right? So it feels, you identify how it feels. So let's go a little deeper. And where do you see yourself? What do you see yourself doing when it comes to your financial life, right? What do you see? Do you see yourself, if you want to feel safe and free, how does that look like for you? It might look like you have a home that you got for yourself. It might look like you have that traveling account full and you're free to venture. It might look like you see your retirement accounts and you have plenty of money to not have to work and relax. What do you see? So here, take another deep breath in, deep exhale, let everything out. And when you're ready, if you close your eyes, gently open them. And I would like for you to take notes of what came up for you, right? What did you see? If you saw anything in particular, if something came up for you, this is a good time to write those things down. Mm-hmm. And if some of you feel comfortable sharing what came up for you in the chat or with your voice, please raise your hand. I would love to learn more about what came up for you. And this is a very personal process, right? Our financial life should be a very personal thing, right? We should take the time to think about, why am I working so hard for, right? So that's what I want to ask you. What are you working so hard for? What is it that you want, right? What is it that you envision? Not only the feel, but what does that look like? What financial life do you want to build for yourself? And you might be asking, how is this connected to budgeting? And I'll tell you, it's so connected, because for us to have a budget that we actually feel motivated to sit down and work on, we have to incorporate what we want for our financial future, right? Otherwise, it becomes a chore, and we don't want it to be a chore. We get to work on our finances. We get to sit down and look at money coming in, money coming out, and think strategically about how can I tweak my expenses so that I have that room to feel safe, empowered, free, in control, etc. Right? So once you visualize those pieces of how you want to feel and how that might look like, that's where we have to start connecting those things we want for ourselves to our goals. And then our goals go into our budget. And that's how everything connects. So here, if you started visualizing some aspects of your financial future, like, oh, I actually saw myself with a little home, or I actually saw myself getting a home for my family or for my parents, etc. So this is the part where it's important that we take that beautiful vision and we turn it into what we call SMART goals, right? And this might not be, this might be something you've heard about, SMART goals. So when it comes to our budget, for us to for things to actually happen, we need to make sure that they're a category in our budget and that we're being as specific as possible. So here, for example, if you say, okay, you know, Irene, when we were reflecting, what I realized is that I want to feel safe, and having money set aside for any unexpected thing, any an emergency, anything like weather-related damages, weather-related emergencies. I just want to make sure that I have a little set aside to be safe. Okay, that's perfect. That's a wonderful goal. Let's turn it into a SMART goal. So what exactly do you want to accomplish? I want to have money set aside for emergencies, right? I want to build my emergency savings. So that's very exact. Notice how different that goal is to sometimes when I ask people, oh, what's your goal? Save money. If we don't know what we're saving for, it's not very motivating, right? It's not very exciting. It's not very exciting. We want to make sure that we start building this goal to make it much more robust and more actionable. And I see Carol, you have your hand up. Let me open your mic. Yes, Carol. Feel free to write your question in the chat as well. I don't hear you, Carol, but if you want to write your question in the chat, Carol, I don't know if you have your mic enabled, but I already enabled it for you. So feel free to write it in the chat, okay? I'm gonna keep going, but if you want to write your question in the chat, please feel free to do so. And then we'll go. I'm gonna come back to you at the end if I don't hear from you. Okay, so be very specific. Then let's make it measurable. We need to know, hey, am I progressing towards that goal or not, right? So having a dollar amount, that's how we're going to measure this progress. So let's say you say, okay, I want to save 6 months worth of my expenses. That could be a goal that is very measurable. Or you can just say, hey, I want to save $6,000 for emergencies. Okay, you decide how you come up with that amount, but have that amount, be very specific. And the other piece is make it achievable, right? Is it realistic for you to achieve that goal considering your current situation, right? Is it realistic? So if you say, okay, I want to save $6,000 for emergencies in 1 year, right? That's going to be called my peace of mind fund. That's another thing that could be helpful, like name things in a way that feels more exciting for you, right? If emergency saving is something that you're like, oh, I don't like the sound of that, peace of mind fund, right? That's another way to think of it that can be a little more personal. So that I encourage you to make everything customizable, right? Customize all your categories in your budget, really create a budget that is for you and connects with who you are and what you want, what you care about. Then if we have that example, right, let's say that I'm thinking 6,000 in 1 year, right? My peace of mind fund. How is it measurable? I have that amount, $6,000. If I say, okay, is it achievable in 1 year? So let's break it down. If I have to save $500 a month to get to my 6,000 in a year, I look at my budget. Is it achievable? If it is, I think you're going to be a little tight, but it is achievable, then we leave it, right? Let's make sure that things that you're not adding additional stress to your life, right? We want to make sure that there's a little there of a challenge, but it's doable and it feels good when you're achieving these goals. We have to make it relevant because let's be honest, sitting down once a month to look at our budget, if we don't make the categories that we're setting money aside for relevant and important enough for us, there's going to be 100 other things competing for our attention and our money. And if we are not very clear, and if we're not adding our priorities and what we really care about within that budget, then life passes by and we spend all our hard-earned money on things that were not as important for us. So be very mindful here and make sure that you're identifying things that are truly important for you. And lastly, make them time-bound. Identify when would you like to accomplish your goal, and so that you can celebrate along the way, right? Celebrating along the way, it's also very, very important. That way we stay engaged, we stay motivated. So now we have that complete picture, right? We started reflecting about our financial past. We identify where our mindset is right now in the present, and we also identify what is it that I want for my financial future. All of those pieces are going to be part of our budget. So before we just talk budget, I would like to share with you this beautiful quotation. If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now, put the foundations under them. That's exactly what we're going to do. So once you have that vision of how you want to feel, how that financial future looks like, now let's make sure that all of those things that matter to you are there in your budget, that they're part of your budget. So when it comes to our numbers, there are 4 numbers that we encourage people to know, to be familiar with. And that's what you make, what you spend, what you owe, and what you have. All of these 4 numbers are connected with your budget, right? We see there what we make and what we spend. But what we owe, that is also part of our budget, right? Those are monthly expenses. Any debt you're paying, there should be a monthly payment there. And when you think about what you have or what you own, if you're saving for something for the future, if you're investing for something for your future, those are expenses. So they're also there, right? That's why all of the numbers come together in your budget. And that's why making sure that we are developing a budget that is personal and it works for us and what we want, that it can be a game changer for our financial life. So I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you're taking the time to evaluate how you can tweak your budget so that it works for you and it becomes something that motivates you to keep going. So let's go through the main categories of our budget. But before that, I want to just acknowledge those of you that might feel a little anxiety in general when it comes to looking at our numbers. So number 1, you're not alone. Number 2, this is a good time to identify why, right? Have you always felt like that? And let's go through that name entertainment exercise, right? Why do you feel anxiety looking at your numbers? And by identifying this, sometimes we can find that, hey, I just don't like, I don't like what I see. Like I'm not liking how expensive things are. I'm not liking how constrained my budget feels. So once we name that, once we're very, very aware of that, when we are actually reviewing the numbers, we can go back to that money mantra we shared at the beginning of focusing on what you can control and start there, right? What can you control? And we'll go through some examples in a minute. But I wanted to share, when you're feeling that anxiety, remember that numbers, at the end of the day, numbers are straightforward. They're there to teach us, right? Numbers simply tell us a story, and it's ultimately up to us to change that story. We just need to learn from the numbers, use those numbers, and know what to look for. So for some of you, especially for business owners in the room, you're not alone in this part, right? You're not alone in this process. There are wonderful financial professionals out there, like bookkeepers, financial coaches, even your CPA, people that can help you navigate your numbers sometimes, especially when you have unique questions. You are not alone. So remember that, right? Remember that this is about going back to basics and identifying what obstacles might be on your way to navigate your numbers with confidence and purpose. But this is something that you don't have to do alone, right? So going back to the budget, right? These 4 numbers are going to be part of our budget, but the main categories we want to see is, first and foremost, our expenses. So what's within our control when it comes to our expenses? And the first piece is understanding them, right? Knowing, where is my money going? Our expenses can tell us a lot about our financial priorities. So after this session, I'm gonna invite you to have a date with your finances and sit down and look at all of your expenses And choose a month that reflects more of like your commonality throughout the year. So choose that month and just look at all those expenses. And if you were to categorize all of those expenses, start identifying which ones would be the biggest categories. Right? For some people, food is a very big category. Of course, utilities, right? Rent, that might be the biggest category. And then that's when we can see, hey, I spend a lot of money on food. Or some other people might say, hey, actually travel is a very big one for me, or entertainment is a very big one for me. So start identifying what are the biggest categories for you. And from there, we can start reflecting, are those categories things that you want or things that you need? For those categories that represent things that we want, that's when we have room. Those areas represent something called opportunity cost, which is this concept that talks about what else we could be using that money for. This is you're missing out on all these opportunities by putting your money in this one thing, right? So when you're looking at your budget and you identify, okay, these categories are ones. So for example, we look at entertainment. You're like, okay, these things are, I buy them because I want them. And if I was to spend that money in other thing, what would I do with that money? So that's opportunity cost. So start identifying those expenses that are much more flexible. Number one, because they're things you want, but number two, because they're things that you can easily say, I'm going to let go of this expense and I'm going to put that money to work for something else, right? Or allocate it in a different category. And also asking, are your expenses within your control? Right? Especially for expenses that are considered needs, like, hey, my phone bill, the internet bill, and things that you're just so used to paying month to month. And that's where we can ask, okay, what's within my control when it comes to this expense? And sometimes we have the opportunity to compare around, see, oh, I might get a better deal elsewhere, or I might actually find a subsidy for some of those costs and minimize them. So that's why every expense matters. Every expense might have more within your control than you think. So take the time to get familiar with your expenses and to listen to the story they're telling you, because ultimately it's a story about you today. It's a story about where your time is going, where your energy is going, and it can teach us a lot about where we are and what we can tweak to get to that financial future we talked about. Within your expenses, and we shared this a little bit ago, is that the debt, right? Within your expenses, we want to make sure that you're addressing sometimes that elephant in the room, which is our debt. So take the time to add your debt to your budget. For this, we recommend you to first and foremost list everything you owe, every single thing you owe, even family and friends, everything you owe. All of those debts. Once you list all of them, identify what are the minimum payments, what are the interest rates, and also here, just for your system, when do you have to pay that, right? Start adding some dates to get organized. And once you have all those minimum payments, you have to make sure that you're incorporating your debt payments, but also as you review your budget, if you have a little bit of extra that you want to put towards paying off your debt quicker, that's where you can start doing those allocations and taking the time to identify the best payment plan, because when you're reviewing your debt, that's when things can come up about, hey, maybe I can manage this debt differently. So there, I would like to invite you to continue learning, because here at Weave, we have in our YouTube channel, we have a series of free videos and workshops that we have had in the past, and we have a couple just on debt and managing your debt. So if you have further questions about managing your debt and your credit, I encourage you to check those free resources as well. So once we did that, right, once we looked at all of our expenses and make sure that all of our debt is there, that's where we can start looking for those opportunity costs, looking for those expenses that I'm like, you know what, maybe I'm spending money on this, but I'm not spending money on that goal that is super important for me. I'm not spending money on my peace of mind fund, but I'm spending money on maybe this gym membership that I no longer use. Can I stop that and use that money for that goal, for that thing that matters more to me. So this is a very personal exercise. So that's why I truly invite you to spend some time with your budget, with your numbers, and ask yourself those questions. What are things that I can let go of, right? What are things that you can let go of? That's going to be the first piece of the homework, right? Once you're reviewing your expenses, try to identify what expenses you can let go of. And here in other workshops where we talk about this piece, that's where I got the gym membership example, because that has been shared in some groups that are saying, hey, well, I'm working out outside, I don't need to pay for that, I'm going to let it go. Or some other community members have shared, hey, gift boxes, I paid for this gift box, I'm going to let it go. Or certain memberships that you might forgot that you had, and you're like, okay, time to let go. But the key here is, if you're going to let go of something, make sure that you are going to apply what you were spending on that piece towards something that truly matters to you, towards something that's going to get you closer to that vision, to those feelings of feeling secure, feeling free, feeling safe, feeling empowered. Now, the other side of the puzzle, our income. So once you took a good look at your expenses, now let's take a look at our income piece. First thing is to identify whether your income is just and sufficient considering your work and skills. In a few months, we're going to have a negotiation workshop at Weave. And this is something that we want to start talking much more about, because when we look at our income and when we think about how can I make my budget feel more spacious, feel truly more and more abundant, it's either we reduce our expenses or we increase our income. And unfortunately, our income has not been increasing at the pace that expenses have increased, right? Inflation and our wages might not be at the same pace. And that's why this part it requires a lot more compassion and requires a deeper strategy, because it requires that we become much more proactive, and it requires that we speak up and we start asking questions, right? And we start maybe changing our prices, right? Maybe learning how to negotiate for ourselves and be better advocates of ourselves. So I want you to truly reflect, especially if you're for business owners in the room. Are you charging correctly, right? Is it enough? Is what you're charging enough to pay yourself what's right and just and sufficient considering your work and skills? The other piece is, how are you tracking and managing your income? That's a very, very, very important piece, because time is money, right? And sometimes by automating certain things within our budget, we are not only making it easier for us to set money aside for certain things or saving, we're also saving time. And your time is very precious, right? So make sure that you're tracking and managing your income in a way that makes your life easier, in a way that helps you feel organized. Because when you are organized and when you know, going back to that confidence definition, right? When you know where you are, who you are, and you know who you're not, you can embrace all of it. Something similar happens to our budget. If you know where things are, if you have a system in place, if you have this, if you know that, okay, once a month I sit down with my numbers and with my finances, have my financial date with myself, that gives you confidence, right? Because that allows you to embrace your financial situation and identify what you don't like so that we can speak up about it and take action on it. Other questions for you to ask yourself is, are there any additional sources of income that you could consider? Is there a business idea you want to explore, right? And also, could I learn new skills that would allow me to generate additional income? That's a very important question. What are new skills that you can learn? That you're something that you're passionate about, that is interesting to you and could translate into income. If anything came up for you, any idea, write it down, because that can be part of your call to action after the session. Okay. So as you navigate your income after the session, whenever you have and I like to call it financial date with yourself or your financial check-in, I would love for you to reflect on what new sources of income you could consider exploring. And Weave is here for you. We have several training programs meant for people to explore and develop their business idea and see how feasible they are, see if they're going to be a good business for them. So you're not alone if you have a business idea that you want to take action on, right? Please reach out if we can, if there's something that we can help you with. And here, this quotation from Albert Einstein comes to mind. He's saying, times of crisis, creativity is more valuable than knowledge. Well, I believe knowledge is very valuable. It's always valuable. But in this situation, when it comes to increasing our income, reducing our expenses, being creative can go a long way, right? Really taking the time to just think about, okay, what do I know how to do? What do I like to do? What do I want to learn more about? And using those answers to create income opportunities, right? So that you truly connect what you care about, your purpose, with your money. So that's another piece, that's another way to think about sources of income that we could consider exploring. So here, let me check the time. Okay, we have a couple of concepts left before we open the space for Q&A. But if any questions start coming up, please feel free to start writing them down. This is the piece where, since we're talking about new sources of income that we could consider exploring, this is where I would like to make sure that as you go through your income, as you reflect on your income, you also think about what savings mean for you and for your future. Because when we're setting money aside for our financial future, that is like paying ourselves. That's paying our future selves. So as you reflect on your income, I would love for you to identify and automate some of that money coming in. How much money can you commit to setting aside for those financial future goals? And make that commitment to yourself, right? Setting aside, it can be money for your emergency fund, it can be money for your retirement, it can be money for the future home you want to buy. You can money for what you want for your future that needs to be present in your budget. And that's when having a savings process in place is going to be key for you to make your life easier and automate a little bit of your budget. So the question here is, do you have a monthly savings process in place? Right? And feel free to share with me, for those of you that do have a monthly savings process in place, if you can share in the chat what helps you with this process, right? Is it a tool you use? Is it something online? Is it you do pen and paper once a month? You do Excel? What system do you use for that monthly savings process in place, right? Some people might say, hey, I actually manually do a transfer every month, or I have a piggy bank, or I've had clients that have different envelopes that they use for different categories and different things that they're saving for, if it's with cash, and then they put it in the bank. But this is where we have to identify what works for us. Some of the things that I want to share about, like the golden rules when it comes to saving and start setting money aside for you on a monthly basis, is save first, not last. The moment your income gets into your account, the moment money comes in, that's when you save. That is it. That's when the commitment for you and your future needs to be honored, right? Because it's a matter of establishing that principle, right? And that commitment starts helping us shift that financial mindset. So when we're looking at our budget, we know that we're prioritizing us. And the other piece, automating your savings. If you can do that, that's going to save you a lot of time and energy. And it's also going to start making your, like, really your financial life, your budget is going to become like a machine, because sometimes you don't have to manually do everything if you automate. The other golden rule here is save in separate accounts based on goal and objective. It's not the same to save for retirement than to save for your kids' education, right? Those things should be taking place in different accounts, because the goal is very different. The term for the goal is different. The risk you can take for the goal is different. And when we save in separate accounts, it's easier for us to track our progress. And the easier it is for us to navigate things, the more organized we are, the more confident we're going to feel. So this is something completely within your control. Identify a way to get organized that works for you. I personally recommend platforms like QuickBooks for business owners, Mint for personal finances. Those are two platforms that could be helpful. But also, I've had clients that they like to sit down with pen and paper and look at their budgets, and we have a handout that we can share after the session. When we send you all the recording, I'm happy to share the handout in case it's helpful for you. But find a way, right? Find a way that works for you. And also another important rule: look at your savings as a necessary expense, right? We're not going to forget to pay the internet. We're not going to forget to pay our phone bill. So if we think about our savings for specific goals like that, like it's a bill that I need to pay, that increases our odds of achieving those financial goals we set up for ourselves. And then another piece is if you want accountability, right? If you're like, hey, like I feel very lonely in this process of saving towards my future, that's where you can start. You can try concepts like group savings, right? That can be a good concept to follow. Or also get your support group around you, right? Like accountability groups that you can start with your friends, where it's truly about sharing. What is it that you're working on for your financial life? Sharing that with people that are close to you, people you care about, and have them share with you, and then you can motivate each other along the way. Right? That makes a big difference when it comes to staying engaged, but also speaking up about money, speaking up about a topic that sometimes it's so taboo, when in reality, it shouldn't be. So it's really up to us to identify what's going to work best, what's going to help us stay engaged and motivated. And another golden rule here is utilize financial products to your advantage. Meaning, once you identify those categories of expenses, for example, you identify which are the categories where you're spending more money. Are there any financial products that could help you be more efficient there, or could help you get more money, kind of get points or cashback or money because you're spending a lot of money there, right? Like, for example, those of you that like to travel, or travel is an important part of your life, there are credit cards that can give you miles. There are credit cards that can give you points for your travels. So being very, very strategic and very creative with our budget and connecting it with what matters most to you and what financial products you're taking advantage of, that whole process, that dance can truly make an impact in how we feel when it comes to managing our money, right? Because we're being proactive. So we covered a lot of ground today. I want to take a moment to pause here. And I would like to ask all of you, before we prepare for Q&A, what changes from what we learned today? What changes can you make to your budget to get closer to the financial future you want? Okay, what changes can you make to your budget to get closer to the financial future you want? I'm going to take a moment here. Please feel free to share in the chat or raise your hand. And I'm seeing some questions. Yes, I'll be able to share with you a template. I'll attach it to the follow-up email from the session. Okay, Chris, thank you for sharing. Chris is going to reevaluate and reduce some expenses. Yes, there you go. And I love the word you use, Chris, reevaluate. Because one thing we haven't shared is, at the end of the day, your budget is a living document, should be a living document that changes with you, just as your goals might change with you, right? So make sure that if this is something that changes and adapts to your life and what life brings your way. So that part of reevaluating, that should be kind of like a constant within our financial life. Rashida shares monthly date to review actuals and budgets. Amen. Amen. That monthly date is so important because that translates into financial confidence, right? Having a process in place reduces that uncertainty so that when we look at our numbers, we know, okay, I'm going to be able to look at them in a couple of weeks or next week, and that helps us feel much more confident. Thank you for sharing. So to start wrapping up here, your budget, or also if you don't like the word budget, I've had clients that call it my spending and savings plan. There you go. I want you to name it in a way that you feel motivated and you feel more engaged. So it is recommended to check it once a month. Make sure you're adding your goals as categories, right? So here, if we have utilities, transportation, you're going to have a savings category, and there you add my peace of mind fund, my first home fund, or my vacation fund. Like, start adding those as categories, and ultimately embrace your budget so that it can help you plan. How is it that you're going to organize your money? And if you share finances with someone else, your budget can help you generate agreements, right? It can help you guide those conversations so that you're grounded in this powerful tool that is your budget. And just some last things, right? Conduct monthly check-ins. Here, one thing that I forgot to share, if you wanted to see the name, is Mint, QuickBooks, Excel. Your bank statements can be a great resource, right? Just print your bank statements, look at all those expenses, right? If you're not used to budgeting, that's a good place to start. And build your financial team, especially for business owners in the house. By you taking the time to build a financial team that helps you navigate your questions and navigate the economic landscape in which we live in, that's going to help you increase your financial confidence. So make sure that you are being proactive to stay engaged with your finances and feel confident when it comes to navigating your numbers, right? And keep learning, right? This is a marathon, not a sprint. And just like I shared at the beginning, that this workshop was a partnership between our Ventura County Libraries and Weave. There's so many great organizations like the Ventura Library that have so many free resources for us to continue learning. So please take advantage of the wonderful resources that we have available in our community. And lastly, I want to invite you to keep connecting the dots. Right? Because when it comes to this vision of having a financial life that makes us feel empowered, that truly makes us feel in control, it's important that we pay attention and nurture those three components, right? It's not only continue learning more about financial basics and how things work, but also making sure that you are embedding your goals and priorities within your financial life. And that you continue navigate your financial mindset, you continue working on it, continue question things that you need to unlearn, and continue speaking up about money. So I'm going to leave you with this quotation before we go to Q&A, which is, getting your things in order allows you to rediscover yourself. This is one from Mary Kondo, who is the mother of organizing. So we want to make sure that we take advantage of this exercise, right? I know that that sometimes this topic can be challenging, especially in times like what we're experiencing now from that economic perspective. So please take this moment to be compassionate with yourself and proactive. Focus on what you can control, so that you can slowly work towards what you shared you wanted for your financial future. And thank you for the messages in the chat. So here's where I want to go to Q&A. I wanted to give you my email here in case anyone has a question that you think about later, because it happens all the time. So we're here for you. And someone shares in the chat, Oh, thank you, Chris, for sharing. So I asked you about resources and what has worked for some of you in the group. And Chris shares, One Finance has been a personal bank account for me for managing my personal finances and has a lot of the elements you've discussed, like automated savings into digital envelopes or pockets for saving for specific goals. That's such a good resource, Chris. Thank you for sharing. So it's called One Finance for the rest of the group. Very good. And that's why talking about this with your friends, with family, with colleagues, with peers, like it's so important, because it's very likely that if you're struggling with something in your finances, the person next to you might be struggling with it too. And the person next to you might know a couple of tools, like today we learned from some of you. So please feel challenge yourself. If at points you don't feel comfortable talking more about this or speaking up, I want to challenge, I want to invite you to challenge yourself so that we can speak more about this and we can share resources with each other so that we can continue learning. So let me stop sharing my screen. So any questions before we start wrapping up? I'm going to add my email in the chat in case anyone has questions. I am going to be emailing you after the session with the link to the recording and the handout. But if there are no further questions, I want to thank you again for joining me this evening, and I hope that what we went through was practical and that you found resources helpful. Let me see, I see a question here in the chat. Separate accounts for different checks. Let me see, Carol is asking. So, Carol, if you can tell me more about your question, I would appreciate it. So if it's, yes, I can hear
me.
Yes.
Yeah, I recently got some checks, and I have a credit union account, and they would not let me do separate accounts based on my mailing address, which is a mailbox. Should I just go to another bank? And because I really want to separate the accounts.
Yeah.
You know.
I would say, Carol, that's interesting. I do know that some banks have a challenging time when you don't have a physical address or you have a PO box. Some banks don't allow that to have for you to set it up as your address. So I would encourage you to try online banks, right? Those can have some flexibility around that. But visit a different bank. So I'm going to share in the chat a website that I really like to compare financial products. It's called Nerd Wallet. And I would start checking there. Compare different accounts depending on what you're saving for. Compare their accounts, either savings accounts, checking accounts, because it might be a matter of finding the right bank that is a little more flexible with that.
Thank you.
Oh, I hope that helps, Carol.
Yeah, thank you for this evening.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. Any other questions or comments you might have? Okay, well, it's 6:45, so I want to be conscious of time. Well, this is where we are here. We're at the end of our session. And again, I just wanted to thank you all for prioritizing for prioritizing your financial life. And I want to invite you to, again, continue talking about this with others, sharing is caring, right? So the more we continue to learn and the more we continue to speak up, the easier it's going to be for us to create a just and equitable society, particularly when it comes to our economic empowerment and reducing the barriers that we experience to get to that concept of economic empowerment. So thank you for being here today. Hope that you found some practical tips, and let me know how it goes. Let me know. We're here for you, both the Ventura County Library and Weave, and I wish you nothing but the best. Have a wonderful night. Thank you all.